Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Fuel Report. Do we ever have a great episode for you tonight? I'm your host, Nightflash. I'm joined by my two awesome co-hosts, CJ and Reider. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. I am always excited for another round of the Fuel Report. You know, it's a bit of a different tempo week for all of us down here because the streams, we're used to that Monday through Friday packed schedule universally. And this week, we took a step back. A couple teams on a week off, a few less clips for our top 10. So it was a really interesting process for us to sort of bring the show together this week and get to this point. But I'm excited as always.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot to talk about, though, of course, because this is the turning point of the season. Playoffs start next week for most teams, and for those who don't, they are going to be finishing up their regular seasons this week. So a lot of teams are getting pretty excited, and we're about to jump into the most exciting part of the year.
No, I completely agree. This is the most exciting part of the year, down to the grindstone. As, like you said, a lot of teams making that push for playoffs, a lot of teams already in that slot trying to get the best seed possible. But we'll talk about that a little later. Let's take a quick sneak peek at some of the segments coming up this week. As you got your returners, you got hot streaks, you got CJ's top 10s, but some new ones. We've got back in action, which is, I'll leave that up to that. You'll find out when that comes up. But that's going to be our second segment of the night. Then we have the Relyt interview. Our awesome head of Fuel, the director of Fuel, decided to sit down and do an interview with us, and that's going to be an absolute banger. That's going to be our third segment. Top fives, top 10s, but it's top five. Tonight, it's that's going to come in at segment 4, and segment 5 is going to be playoff picks. You guys got to see that last week, so just a bit of an update on what's going on with our playoff run. Should be great. I'm super excited for the show, but let's get things kicked off right away with hot streaks here. CJ, take it away.
Yeah, and you know what? Hot Streaks, love the segment. A lot of fun to do. And you know what? We're going to have Rainbow Six, CSGO, Val, and Overwatch as our participants in Hot Streak. And you know what? R6 has sort of been our resident hot streak players week in and week out, but as our Fuel Report has progressed over time, we've gotten to see new faces join the pack. Like, I know CSGO, they're off on some playoff race. Val and Overwatch are trying to do the same as well, so it's exciting to see these teams playing well, and it'll be interesting to see how they do in the playoffs. To kick off our hot streaks, we can't start with anybody else but our Rainbow Six Siege team. Justin, Kieran, we're lucky enough to have our Rainbow Six Siege casters on the Fuel Report. Guys, tell me a little bit about this squad.
Yeah, these guys are still unstoppable. I mean, it's almost the same story as last week. They completely 3-0'd their opponents this week on Tuesday. It was a great stream. They even came away with a 7-0 map win. I think that was the first time that they were accomplished that this season. But short and sweet, these guys are undefeated, 8-0, but they do have their toughest opponents yet this week. So on Tuesday, you got to check out me and Nightflash on that stream because it's going to be a doozy. We're going to see if these guys can stay undefeated. But I mean, let's talk about this round differential here, Kieran. It's kind of outstanding.
Oh, it's past outstanding. It's unheard of. 116-42. That's insane. That's more than double the round wins to round losses. If somebody wants to do the math real quick on what it actually is, but that is just absolutely unheard of. But, it's 74. 74 is the round differential of 74 positive rounds. But even the map differential, still not even losing a map. That is so key to this team's success. I think they've just sort of run with this heat that they brought at the start of the season. And that's really the best way to say it. They brought the heat at the start of the season, and they have gone undefeated. And I say it every time I talk about R6. Our first stream of the season of R6, we talked to team captain Perza where he said they were going undefeated. They were going to be back-to-back. They weren't losing a map. And at that point, I was kind of, skeptical. I was like not losing a map in a season, not losing a game in a season. that's going to be a tough feat. But he's proved me wrong. He's done it. He is stuck to his word, and like you said, this upcoming match is really the decider to see if they're the best team in this division, going up against RMU Blue, and that should be a grade A bang out. That match is going to be insane, and I'm super excited to cast that match, so be sure to check that out on Tuesday. But I think our next team up here is going to be CS. CJ, you are our resident CS expert. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with them.
Yeah, you know what? These guys are just stringing together win after win. They've just headed into the playoffs, so I got the opportunity to cast their round of 8 matchup just on Friday night. But when you look at the regular season, 6-1, maps going 13-3, maybe not as dominant as our Rainbow Six team, but still flexing their muscles. Coming into their first playoff game last night, it was a team they got to see during the regular season. The first game of that matchup, and it was Northwestern University is who they were up against. The first map of the regular season matchup was super tight before a wash coming into the second matchup there. But in the playoffs, they came in and they absolutely rolled them from start to finish. The first game was 16-2. You can't get more dominant than that. And the guys were playing absolutely lights out. Like, we talk about Ugas Plata a lot, the captain of this squad, and week in and week out, I would compare him to like a Bonk, for example, in CoD. You just get so used to what you can come to expect from him. But this week in that playoff game, Ugas Plata still played great, but everybody else was just so dialed and ready to step up to the next level. Like Cheap in particular had a crazy game, had just played outrageous on the op. It was fantastic to watch for sure. Now, we can take a quick peek at the standings from the regular season, have an idea of where everything shook out ultimately. So Fanshawe coming out at the top of the leaderboard, and it's Northwestern. They took on the 4 seed in the round of 8. And they eliminated them. So they're not going to see Washu Bears or Purdue Black in the playoffs, but we do have their playoff bracket for you as well. And it's going to be, I want to say, RMC Yellow Jackets, and that is who it is, the Fuel. They're taking them on April 14th, the semifinal round. And if they win that and Purdue Black, their pool mates, win that, they'll have an opportunity actually to have a regular season rematch of a game that went to all 3 maps. So ultimately, this CSGO team they're in the thick of things for their playoff push. And that's about a wrap on CSGO for our hot streaks. Justin, our Valorant guy, how's it going over there?
Well, it's still going pretty well. These guys are locked into playoffs in the NECC, which is nice to see. The record is currently 4-4, and they're completely even on the maps. Now, the reason why they're featured on hot streaks is because how these guys started in their season compared to how they are now. It's actually a really interesting story. Last semester's team was completely different. Last semester's team was an award-winning team. So going into this semester, into the preseason, these guys didn't look like they could fill the shoes of that last semester's team. And they were even slotted in a league higher than they were last year, even though their preseason games weren't so fantastic. Now, coming into the second half of the season, these guys have showed up. They've proved that they belong not only in this division, but that they can make a run into the playoffs that nobody expected them to make in the first half. Big props to team captain Coach Boyce for whipping this team together into shape in time for playoffs, and of course to the rest of the guys on the team. I mean, we've seen Akimbo, who was an academy player last season. He's shown on screen. He's played really well in the second half of the season. Vici has had really, really great looks. Alco is playing some of the best Valorant he's ever played. And, of course, Sworn's another new member to this roster. He's playing out of his mind on that duelist pick. And then, of course, Toasty slotting in here and there as well for the team has been huge. These guys, we could see a lot more wins out of them coming into the postseason. Definitely one of the teams to watch out for.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's time for my personal favorite team in this segment, Overwatch. Overwatch has been on kind of on the same ground as Valorant, starting off the season with a quick win and then 4 very just got absolutely rolled. 3 times, got absolutely rolled. But have really managed to turn this season around, making this a now 5-3. You see up there, Fisher is one of the teams that they've teed up against and managed to take that win against Fisher. So that's it's good news for Overwatch, and they've really done well in turning their season around, sort of flipping it on its head and rolling with the momentum that they built. Maps 20-12. So that's a pretty big difference. That's an 8 map difference, which is pretty big. Rounds, 10 round difference. Once again, pretty big for only having 2 extra wins. So it should be they're looking to continue their run and into playoffs. I believe their first playoff game is next week. But that should be pretty good. I think we have their bracket as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, teeing up against LIU Overwatch 2 on April 15th. No, April 5th. And then possibly a second game if they win that first one on April 5th as well. So, could be a double header for them. And if it is, look out for that. That should be an absolute banger. But no matter what, go cheer on the fellas. They're the ladies and gentlemen over there at Overwatch. They really pour their heart and soul, as do all our Fuel teams, into what they do. And so be sure to cheer on the folks over there. But go ahead.
Later in the show, when we get the playoff picks, we'll definitely run through all our teams, who you need to check in with, keep an eye on, and root on in the coming weeks in their playoff battles. Now, coming up next, we got some back in action for you. And who else than us three, to sit back and talk about a back in action squads. We got CoD, League of Legends Academy, and Apex. And you know what? We got our CoD experience, Nightflash. You've played, you've done a bit of, cast behind the scenes observing. Reider, you can always find us running up on the CoD stream. The Call of Duty team, is really strange for me, and I know it must be for you as well. I know you're a Valorant guy as well, but, week in and week out, you just get into that consistency of casting Call of Duty. And we've been doing it for almost a full school year now, but the last few weeks, it's been a little silent. We haven't heard of them, but they're back. They're back on streams, CCL action, and they got a tough test coming up this week.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And you know what? This team has gone through a lot of changes. Noted started out with them in the preseason. Then they brought up Fiend. And, of course, Cure was playing at that time. Cure is no longer playing on the roster, and Noted has actually come back into the roster. But in the last few weeks, we haven't seen this new team or the roster they played with in the preseason play a whole ton because there was a break week and they had a forfeit, which was York. So they haven't played in the last 2 weeks, but now they get into LCQs here. And the record isn't actually great. An esport that is traditionally one of the Fanshawe Fuel's top-level teams has been struggling this season so far, but they are given another chance here with LCQs, which will be run similarly to how the qualifiers were run at the start of the semester, where it should be double elimination for them to lose, and they'll have 2 games this coming Monday. But the map differential -4, their hardpoint average actually isn't so bad, and the S&D rounds are relatively close. So if these guys are able to click together, if they're able to get scrims going too in between games and have some success off camera, these guys should be able to play competitively in the LCQs. The last chance qualifiers should be against teams mostly from the open division, teams that are technically in a division lower to them. But Bonk himself said that these qualifiers are going to be extraordinarily tough for this team. And here's their group, CJ.
Yeah, and you know what? We know how strong a squad Rowan University is, and they might be coming out of the open bracket. But ultimately, we've talked to Team Captain Bonk, like you noted. There are some really strong teams coming out of open, and Rowan at 10-1, proving they're absolutely one of them. And then University of Toledo, 4-7. You would assume they may not be a great team, but you don't know that for sure. We don't know the type of opponents they may have not had the luck of ultimately running into. So for the Fuel, I believe it's double elim. So as long as they can find one victory on Monday, they'll have a chance to extend their season just a little bit further. But if we want to take a look at the actual Div 2 final standings from the regular season where the Fuel competed, there's some powerhouse squads the Fuel have had to go up against so far this season. Most notably, the Western Esports crew. Carlton, a really good squad as well. So is Mac. Fanshawe's had a lot of tight games. You are with Garnett as well. But for me, it's just when you've had such a tough season, it sort of, iron sharpens iron. It gives you that opportunity to maybe you will be able to find that success through your LCQ stages. Now, Nightflash, you're very aware of the academy team as you're one of the players on it and how players have had to come up and down, shifting through them. As a person with experience playing at the comp level, how much do you think this revolving door of a fourth seat on this one team is going to affect their synergy entering into the LCQs?
Oh, it's going to have a massive effect on them. Unfortunately, we did lose a few players, but it no doubt about it, it's going to have a massive effect. We talk so much about synergy on this show, and how important it is, and I personally know that I talk about it a lot, but it really is one of the most important things. You know your teammates, sort of their I'm looking for a word here. They're what they like to do consistently, and having a revolving door of players coming in and out, it sort of takes that comfort level away. You're going from Cure, who has sort of proven himself at the top level. He's he previously played for another school. He played for Fanshawe last semester. So he's proven that he can sort of hold his own, and his teammates, Boss Frost, Bonk, Airzy at the time, they all knew sort of what his game plan was and what he brought to the map. Where with newer players like Fiend and Noted coming up, it kind of leaves some questions in the minds of those returning players and those players who maybe haven't teamed with them that much. In this particular situation, I have no idea what Noted's going to do, or I have no idea what Fiend's going to do. And we've sort of seen Fiend slot into that spot earlier in the season, and so that synergy might start to be building with Fiend, and it might be at that point where it's like, okay, I know Fiend's going to be, in this corner, or running down this lane, or holding this angle, whatever. But especially with Noted sort of starting out on the roster and then moving down to T2 and then back up to T1. It's interesting to see if the team is sort of going to have that comfort level with Noted, and if they're what's going to happen with them, essentially. But I think this team definitely has potential to pop off. Noted has an amazing shot on him. Obviously, we've got our superstar Bonk. He is unreal at the game. Boss Frost he puts up those consistent numbers. That he's sticky to the hill time too. If there's a hill, he's on it. And then Fiend is just the guy's a demon. Like we've seen him get 6 pieces. We've seen him just absolutely fry somebody on an off angle. We've seen him snap onto kids. So I think this roster really has a lot of potential. It's just whether or not they reach that skill ceiling or not, and that's yet to be seen. Hopefully, the boys are sort of running it up, whether it's playing rank play or playing actual scrims. But that's yet to be seen. I know that we've seen. Sorry, can we real quick look at their bracket again? I can't remember the team's name for CoD. Can we look at CoD's bracket again, real quick? Like their LCQ bracket, real quick.
Yes,
Rowan. It's Rowan. So in the qualifiers, we actually played Rowan, and they, to put it bluntly, they pumped us. I'm pretty sure we got 3-1 by Rowan University in the initial qualifiers. So there's definitely some bad blood in the Fuel going up against Rowan. So that is definitely going to be a banger of a game. We know Rowan's talented. We don't really know much about Toledo. So that Rowan squad is definitely sort of on Fuel's map. They're on their radar as someone who has that upset potential coming from open bracket. But Toledo, I don't really know a lot about them. I don't think the boys know a lot about them. Not the most impressive record either. So definitely still a threat, but not as big as Rowan. Rowan's a real, like they're kind of the top dog in that LCQ, if I'm being honest. So look for an upset on. I'm pretty sure that's going down Monday. No, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So be sure to check out the COD stream if you're a fan of COD, or if you're a fan of the Fanshawe, you'll cheer the boys on Monday. But who else is getting back in action? League Academy. What?
Yeah. You know what? League has been pretty silent this year. The one team eliminated from CCL action pretty early, and ultimately they just haven't got the streams for this academy squad. So just want to shout out their team really quick. You got Bashed in the top lane, the Dopper in the jungle. You got Captain Instant Ramen in the mid lane, Asenix at ADC, and Simpy at support, with the one team captain as the coach in Sutek. These guys have been completing in the NECC Spring League 2023. They've had a 3-4 record on the season. So, some ups and downs, but I got to have a quick chat with their captain coming into this segment, and they said it's been a pretty decent season. Everybody's been really busy with school. So, you know what? We've talked about this so many times throughout the field report. We're all college students. We all have, people have part-time jobs. People have clubs they're a part of. You have social lives, and just balancing that work-life balance can be really challenging. So finding times to scrim, to get that practice in, it's always something you have to work with. But ultimately, Captain Ramen noted, as much as everybody wants to win, these guys are coming out. They just want to play as a team, have some fun, enjoy the journey. And, this academy team hasn't had the opportunity to be streamed whatsoever this season. I believe they will be in action this Wednesday. Make sure you check in, join some League of Legends action. I am one of the league casters. I'm so excited to get another league stream in this season. So make sure you check in on that this Wednesday. Something going on today, Apex Legends. So it was the TELUS tournament this evening. And you know what? We were getting prepped for the podcast today, but we couldn't help but checking in for a couple rounds when we could. And the team performed fairly well. I know we caught round 4, and they finished third place life-wise, 4th total points. And then we caught round 5 as well, and they finished 4th placement-wise. So, one of 2 Canadian teams in the tournament. There's a high school team, so 2 post-secondary Canadian teams. We have the high school team as well, and a couple of pro players along the way. So team captain of this Apex squad, Rusty, always quick to respond and lay a helping hand to the podcast. He got this graphic sent our way at lightning speed after these guys loaded out of the tournament, and they're coming away in the advanced division with a 5th place finish. My goodness, that is immensely impressive.
Yeah. That's actually huge for not just the program and sort of getting our name out there. It's also huge for the players, because unlike a lot of the leagues that we compete in, this tournament series had a prize pool. I believe it was $15K, and top 5 get paid. So even though they didn't take that first or second place, where that's usually where the good money is at, to sort of put it. That's where you get paid the most. They're still walking away with something. I believe they tied for 5th, but I think they got better placements, so that's why they took that 5th spot. But they were just sort of popping off. Not so much in the kills department, but they were playing extremely well as a team. They were playing it slow, getting those placement points, which are so important. I also feel the need to mention that there were professional Apex players in this tournament. So for 3 college students that just happened to attend Fanshawe, to sort of come in and grab that 5th place finish is so huge. And it's super impressive to sort of see that, hey, these collegiate players are able to compete with the handful of pro players in this tournament, in this series. But yeah, Apex was really popping off. I think that's it's so awesome to see sort of that future in esports, and just another esport that we get to compete in. Not so much cast, but the more esports we get to compete in, the better. The more opportunities that we create for people and content and stuff. So that's pretty sweet. But Reider, you got any thoughts on our Apex team here?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to see Rusty G which I believe is the captain of that team, just challenging pro players in the top 4, top 5 teams, like final circles. It was kind of nuts to see him go up and win some fights too. Huge for that team to get started. Their name is certainly out there, and I've got experience, watching fuel teams be created in new esports. There's never any expectation for these teams, but to see this Apex team do so well means very promising things in the future. There's always been an interest in Apex, and the only reason why we haven't had an Apex team to this point right now is because private lobbies just didn't exist. You couldn't host your own tournaments. Anything hosted was from devs handing out lobby codes to certain tournament organizers, and it just wasn't really viable to have a collegiate team. Now that anyone can create a lobby, there's so many leagues that have sprung up. We created a collegiate team, and to play so well in the TELUS tournament, one of their very first competitions, is so promising for this team. Hopefully, when we get into the fall, we retain some players, and the interest for these teams grows. And if you are good at Apex or just want to play, hop into the Fuel Discord and see if you can't try out in the fall, because this team is going places. I'm certainly excited to see what's in store for them next.
Yeah, I want to talk about Rusty G just a little bit more here, because, he even got a couple shout outs from the casters. We were watching that live on air, and you know what, Nightflash, you're exactly right. There were multiple engagements where Rusty G has pro players right on his roof. Like, it was around, I want to say around Mirage Etoile at one point, where they were absolutely hemmed into a box, and they didn't hold out for a minute. They held out, period. You know what I mean? They were able to fend off the advance of those pro players. A third party came in and they were able to get out, but just multiple interactions where we got to watch them get in those sort of engagements. They weren't getting rolled. They weren't getting stopped. They were up to the challenge and ready to compete as well. And this the other thing I wanted to note about Rusty. Rusty is also the captain of our Academy Rocket League team. So he's playing Academy Rocket League. He's gotten some subbing in on the one team as well. This guy is all over the place. So just finding the time to practice, getting that synergy in, it is super impressive. Before I duck out of this Apex portion of our back in action and we get ourselves trending towards the Tyler interview, I wanted to shout out St. Vincent High School. The only high school team competing in that TELUS tournament, at least the advanced division. That is so impressive. We got to see a couple interactions with them. And for me, that just kind of really goes to show, the next generation isn't coming. They're here. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're ready to compete. They have that exposure to these games at a younger age. And you know what? I feel it. When I'm playing Call of Duty, I am getting old. I'm not quite as snappy as I was in my younger years. And these kids are just getting a controller in their hands at a crazy speed, and they're just so ready up to the test to challenge anybody at the highest level.
I also think they did better than Toronto Metro in a couple maps. I don't know in the final standings if they did better than them, but this St. Vincent High School team, they did really well in the TELUS tournament, enough to beat TMU's Apex team in a couple maps, which is certainly impressive. Yeah, you see they're number 11, they're 3 points behind a college team. And that's crazy to me.
They're also 6 points ahead of another college team, TMU Blue, down in number 15 there. But yeah, no, they were gross. Those, St. Vincent, I'm not sure where you're located. I'm assuming Canada, but you guys were extremely talented. Keep up the work. Come to Fanshawe. We need more gross gamers on the team. Come to Fanshawe. But yeah, no, also to touch on, CJ was talking about Rusty sort of popping off in game 4 there with those pro players on the roof. I'm pretty sure Fanshawe actually eliminated that team in game 4, which just sort of goes to show like how close the level of skill is. Like, granted, the other team may have been getting third partied or whatever, but just sort of the fact that a collegiate team is able to wipe a professional squad or some professional players on a squad it's super impressive. And like you said, the future's here, because as collegiate players, we are sort of in the position to be the future of future players in esports. So it's great to see. It's great to sort of see the development come through. But I'm pretty sure. That's
hopefully
good.
Apex isn't like a behind the scenes team as well. We don't get to see them on stream a lot just because of the lobbies. Only the host can spectate, and it would be kind of unfair if a school got to observe every aspect, and of course the leagues are going to want to stream them themselves. So I mean, we can also brainstorm how we can get these guys on our stream as much as we can, whether it's social commentary over league broadcasts or commentary over the players' POVs. But hopefully we can get these guys on the Fuel stream at some point, because they're entertaining to watch. Sorry, I cut you off, Nightflash.
Oh, no worries, because I'm going to dive in here as well, because there's something I wanted to bring up before we wrapped up the segment as well, and we headed over to that Tyler interview. Honestly, for me, I just wanted to, the theory for me is, esports is growing, it's developing. And a couple of years ago, it just wouldn't be plausible to think about, big Call of Duty clubs at a high school level, big Apex clubs. But as time starts to progress and these things develop, there was no such thing as a Call of Duty college team half a decade ago, you know what I mean? And maybe half a decade from now, there'll be full-blown high school leagues. And you gotta dream of the sort of farm team potential, NHL, AHL, being able to develop these players, but not only like have them be developed along the way, coached up, learn some things, but be able to be like, oh yeah, Timmy's playing at a high school just down the road, and we know him, we've gotten to interact with him, and just, the scouting aspect, it just adds so many more layers to the puzzle for me. But I feel like it's that time. This interview we got coming up, the Relyt interview, Tyler Hetherington, the director of esports at the Fanshawe Student Union. It's an important one at the end of the day. You know what I mean? I'm glad we were able to find time in Tyler's busy schedule to meet with us, and not for just a couple of minutes, but a whole lot of them. We got a great long sit-down conversation. It's me, and Mr. Mins would never abandon us completely on the podcast. He loves to make his weekly cameo appearance. So we're going to step aside, and we're going to leave you with an interview. It's me and Mr. Mins interviewing Tyler Hetherington, esports director at the Fanshawe Student Union. Welcome back to another segment of the Fuel Report. I'm CJ Goder. I'm joined by Mr. Mins here on my right, and Tyler Hetherington, the big boss himself, on my left. So we're getting this interview done a little bit ahead of schedule, and it's not often we get an opportunity to talk to Tyler in this sense, where we can really just sink our teeth and ask those questions, get that deep dive, that behind the scenes. But most importantly for us to start off here, just Tyler, how did you get involved in esports? Like, how do you end up here?
Well, I had a previous career on the radio, and then I joined the Fanshawe Student Union as their event coordinator. So I did all the events on campus. I did that for 6 years, just over 6 years. So every frost show, every drag show, every bingo, every little event that was put on by the Fanshawe Student Union, it was my job to plan and execute and run those events. And because I didn't like free time, I also proposed esports pretty early into that career. We started Fuel as just like weekly tournaments, and that was kind of my intro. My idea was for us to always get to where we are today and even further when I very first proposed it at the very beginning, but that was kind of my intro. I came from kind of the independent music event side of things, saw esports as something I wanted to do in the future, make sure it's a big thing on campus here, and we're still doing that every day, trying to make it bigger. So that was my intro, just playing it as a kid and playing competitive chell. But other than that, it was being an event planner, seeing that was something that wasn't happening on campus at all. Two of the big things I'm really proud of is the amount of international events that we have now. When I first got the job, we didn't really do a lot of that. And then, of course, building esports to where it is here on campus now.
I guess what I'm really curious, from you saying at the start that this was something you were trying to like integrate in all the time, how was that trying to pitch that to others?
It's not easy, because when you're pitching esports, the biggest struggle, and it's not their fault, it's a cliff issue of education, is people of a certain age just don't understand it. They don't get it. And honestly, it's not their fault. It's just an education. You have to tell them what it is. You have to educate them on what, it's not guys looking like me sitting in the basement drinking Monsters till 3 a.m. anymore. Sometimes it is, but that's not really what esports is anymore, especially on the competitive side of things. It's just an education of what esports has grown into, what it can be in a couple years, and then getting buy-in from the right people. And that takes time, that takes conversations, it takes events where you have to prove and show. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Now, you talked about you played, a bit of competitive chell. You have this background of an events planner, and you said, you really were a driving force. You wanted esports to get involved. Where did that sort of angle come from for you? You have that event planning background. You've played a bit of chell, but why, you described how there's a bit of a knowledge and education and knowing about esports. Where did yours come from?
Honestly, it came from throwing the events, seeing how big it is, and seeing the awesome community that was built around it. One of the great things about colleges and university life is you get to find your people. We threw a few gaming events, and you just seen people who were like instantly friends, and like roommates became of it. Relationships came out of these small little gaming events, and I was like, all right, if we extrapolate this, if we expand this, if we make this a big focus, imagine the impact we could have on some students. So I knew of gaming, and I wasn't the one that was following all the championships and knowing every game off by heart. It's impossible to know them all. But I had a basic knowledge of it. I enjoyed gaming on my own, and then I just saw the potential of it. We just built it to where it is now.
The one part I'm trying to think about is for anyone that's really trying to start like a career into the esports and even maybe a bit more like a position like what you have, where would you recommend them to start off?
I would probably recommend them not to. It is a struggle. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours. Luckily, I was kind of at the beginning of my relationship with my wife, the beginning of making a family, so had the extra time. I stopped doing the radio gig because of how I was trying to get the esports growing, it's a lot of work at first, and it's a lot of advocating. It's a lot of activating students, empowering students, but it's a lot of advocating to your bosses and their bosses and their bosses and other random people on campuses. It's not an easy thing to start, because I've kind of been there from the beginning, I've linked up with a few other people who are kind of in a similar situation in Canada. We now started Esport Canada Post-Secondary, which is a not-for-profit that we have with Esport Canada, and we're helping other programs grow. So we're identifying the other me's around Canada that maybe are working part-time on esports, or our student presidents, we're working with a lot of them, to try to get full recognized programs on campuses across Canada. So that's because I've been through this, because a couple other people in Canada have been through this, we kind of bonded together to help other people get there. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. It's not high paying. It's not, you gotta really, just like most things in esports, you gotta have the love for it. Most people who are going into esports, they're just like, I game. I want to work in it. You got to find those other angles, whether that's behind the mic, behind the camera, whether that's making graphics, whether that's being content creation or social media, or, only the 0.01 actually get paid to play. There's a whole industry around it. Even if you're in health and fitness, if you are if you're trying to be an awesome chef, you can find a way in esports if you're ready to angle it and work at it that way. So there is a huge industry, and there's a huge industry that's budding, but you have to be able to do more than just esports. Very few people have a full career in esports, and it's not lasting very long. You have to have that adaptability where you could be the social media person for a competitive team, but you could also be the social media person for a gas station, or not. Gas station's a terrible example maybe, but for any other kind of social media content that would be needed out there, any other marketing firm or anything like that. So that's what I would tell an esports person right now, is to not focus only on esports, kind of be multifaceted where you can do a couple things. But if your passion's in esports, obviously make that the thing that you're really fighting for.
No, absolutely. We sort of painted this arc of I guess you could say the development of Fuel, how it's sort of gotten established. Now, the real important mark I kind of want to hammer out here is, you started off with the title of, an events coordinator or something in that elk, and now you're the esports director. So obviously, you've pushed the cart up the hill, you've made that progress, you've had that success. For you, at what moment did you start to realize, like, okay, we're starting to get some traction here, like we might be able to get this done?
Yeah, when I was, my allotted hours per week was almost all esports, I knew that this was coming. It took some convincing of bosses. It's people that just don't understand, but we just grew so big. The show improve style is kind of a big style that I do. When our events were just like having huge numbers, our Discord having big numbers, just like the amount of students that are involved, whether that's with work study, whether that's with volunteerism, whether that's with completing on playing on the teams, whether that's just coming to the social nights, the community nights that we do, those numbers don't lie. We were by far the biggest club, wasn't even close. We have the numbers for events. We have the stream numbers, to compete with what are some of the classical sport numbers as well for their streaming of their games. And, we're way ahead in production. We're way ahead in a lot of ways. And we can, learn some stuff from the classic ways as well. But the numbers just didn't lie. Our program built to a point where the bosses finally said, all right, Kyler, this is your job. This is what you have to do. You're already doing it, but here, this is your full-time job now. So it was nice. And it's only like a year and 2 months that's happened. Like it was not that last January, but the January before. So it's still pretty early, but it's a great investment and it's a great check mark by the Fanshawe Student Union to do that. And we just keep growing every day.
And I mean, thinking about that growing aspect side, there's a lot of it for parents that I would look around that, maybe they don't have enough knowledge around it, or there's just not enough information provided for them to maybe understand what really esports is all about. Because there's a lot of times talking to some of the parents, they're like, what is my kid playing? What team is he on? And I guess just thinking like for you being like a parent as well, where do you think what do you kind of provide or recommend to parents to try to give them a bit more knowledge on what this is all about?
Yeah, and a lot of that is just, again, that education and just generational gaps where, people who grew up with zero gaming have kids who are doing nothing but gaming, and, they're screaming in their rooms and they're whatever. So when we have open houses or when we have new students who are bringing their parents to see the room or to talk about the program, I quite often send the kid into the room and I talk to the parents in the hallway. And it's just about finding what that parent did growing up that I could relate this to. When younger people, they used to meet at certain person's house and they had all the bikes in front of the house. Well, that's what Discord and that's what gaming is like now. You go online on Discord and you see 80 of your friends with their bikes parked in one chat room and you join that chat room to see your friends. That's just the way it is now. Most parents, I can find something that I can try to relate it to. But you got to support your kids no matter what they're into. And if they're into gaming and, there's a career they could get out of that. But not only that, if there's just an opportunity for them to find their lifelong friends. There's a lot of people out there who are, their best friends are online. And sometimes they live in the same city and sometimes they live across the world. You're not going to find those people unless you're supported and you can find those people. And that's one of the great things about our program. That's one of the great things I talk to students and family about is this is where they're going to find their long-term friends. Most students who maybe had or parents who had an education, they went and they joined a club. They joined, a debate club. They joined a basketball club. They joined a volunteerism club. And that's where they found their friends. So it's easy to explain, this fuel is where they'll find their lifelong friends. So that's the way I put it to parents.
Well, we mentioned the parental stuff, and you've told us just how much of an investment time-wise it is, and how much you've put into it. You're also a father of 2 kids. How has that been? How's that work-life balance been?
I got to thank the FSU with that, where they kind of give me, the rope to kind of make my own hours. So luckily, a lot of, this goes against what I said earlier, but a lot of gaming happens late at night. And my kids are luckily on a great routine where they are out by 8 o'clock every evening. So some of the games have started, but a lot of the community stuff happens kind of 7 p.m. and later. So I can come in during the day, do my office work, do whatever needs to happen. I can go home, pick my kid up every day. It's amazing that I'm able to do that. My wife works till 5 or 6:30, so it's amazing that I can meet him at the bus stop for 3 and kind of have that 3-4 hours of family life. And then I can check on the phone and check on the computer and get into Discord and get into whatever is happening that night. So I thank the FSU where they kind of give me that rope, and I think it's important for someone who's in my position to be able because there's some people that have this job in the States or other places, and it's 110 hours a week. It's nonstop. You need to be able to touch grass. You need to be able to breathe. I'm lucky I have the kids who they make me get away from the Discord and from the gaming world because they need their dad, and I want to be there with them. And I'm playing road hockey all day yesterday. So stuff like that, that's important because you can't have your mind always on work. It's just impossible. You have to have those mental breaks, and they help me as much as I help them with that. So.
No, absolutely. And I just have a follow-up question for that. I know Min's is sitting there burning to have a follow-up, but I'm going to forget about this one if I don't get it out there. I would consider you a bit of a trailblazer in Canada when it comes to pushing esports forward. It's not that you're just the esports director here. You're greatly involved in Esports Canada, which you've talked about earlier. Now, I know personally, my dad loves restoring arcade games. I grew up in a household where it's okay for me to love video games. It's okay for me to talk about it. Have you ever had that perspective where it's like 10 years from now, you're probably going to be the cool dad, you know what I mean? The esports director involved, you have that education, you have that knowledge. Does that ever cross your mind?
Not yet, because they're so young, so it hasn't quite happened yet. They're 4 and 2, so that doesn't quite happen. But I'm the cool uncle. I'm the oldest of 8, so there's a lot of nieces and nephews, and when they find out what I do, you can see it in their eyes. And then we have some younger people in the neighborhood that kind of live close, and as soon as I mention what I do, they're like, "Oh, this is amazing! This is so cool." So it's to the people that get it, it's awesome and it's cool. But there's still a lot of people where I say what they do, and they're like, "What?" And I'm just like, all right, well, I know there's a block there. It's just not going to be able to explain it. But the easiest way is just to say, what a track and field coordinator would run, because there's so many different teams, so many different ways of playing. That's kind of the easiest way I've said it to some people. But hey, I'd love to be the cool dad. I hope so. Our house is going to be the house where kids can come and hang out. I grew up in that kind of household where our house was the cool house, and or at least the house that it was acceptable for everybody to go to. So that'll be our house. And if they're coming over to game, that's fantastic. And if not, if they're coming over to play whatever, that's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about that, things like gaming being acceptable, and even for you growing up, was it very much acceptable for?
Of course not. Yeah, again, we talk about this generational gap. I'm in a weird spot where my age, where people older than me just don't get none of it. People that younger than me, it was their entire lives. They've had YouTube their entire lives. They've had computers in their house their entire lives. I'm kind of in the middle there where, I was making sites on GeoCities or Angel Fire or these old crazy sites that you guys shouldn't understand. But I was there for MySpace. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So it wasn't accepted at all. But I did have parents that supported it, and they let me have the gaming units and everything. So I was the older brother who gave my younger brother the broken controller, but said he was playing with me. That's how I grew up. But it's it is what it is. But again, that's going to come with education. That's going to come with people acceptance, people understanding the industry that this is, and the positives to gaming, because there was a lot of negative tones around it. It's just what happens. And there's a lot of negative tones around a lot of things in the world. And once people get more educated, they understand things a little bit more, that gets accepted more. Gaming's no different.
I got to dive into this one, though. Your favorite game?
Well, it's not very esporty. That's the problem. Is I'm a big Fallout stan, so I play Fallout quite a bit. Actually, just started 3 again very recently. I'm excited for Starfield. We finally have a date. I like Mass Effect, I like space, I like Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff. So, you give me Fallout and space and I'm all in. So, Starfield comes out, I'm going to be... Now, the real problem, do you know the date? It's September 6th, September 12th.
Oh.
It's I'm going to be busy. No. This is the work. Give it to me at the start of summer. They're going to have the whole summer to do it? No, so... don't DM me much in September is basically what even though it's a really important time. But yeah, so I'm a Fallout guy. 3-4 New Vegas, not so much 76, just because of the time commitment. But yeah, Fallout's my favorite game.
You know, there's just, and you know what, I love how, for example, TFT, not necessarily an esport, but we run events like that. And I feel like that's something we've done a great job at Fuel with, is just, you know, for example, Veronica behind the desk, Radish, like Sims, for example. There's a slew of games out there that you can't necessarily compete in. Avenue-wise, going forward in Fuel, are there any thoughts to try and integrate more of those community nights, try and expand the demographic outside of the prototypical esports? Now, I know we do Apex tournaments, we do bits and pieces, but casting has kind of been sort of our main bread and butter at Fuel, and playing the games and our community nights. What else is in mind going forward in the future for Fuel?
So a lot of that, you just need room to do those things. You need to have the interest for those things. So, you know, we're not at a level where we're recruiting students. So I made sure that we focus on the production and on the casting side. We finally got the room. It has space. It doesn't have enough space. So we're going to work on that. The casual gaming is just as important, if not more important, than our competitive gaming. You know. And this is kind of breaking some walls, but like if you have 100 competitive players, but you have 2,000 community players who just play casual games on a campus life, those 2,000 are more important than the 100. The 100 are doing amazing work and they're competing, and like I'm not taking away from any of that. That's not what I'm saying. So don't get me wrong there. But you have to look at the whole community, and the whole community is just as important, and that's why we have those switches in there in the games room. You know, we do need to have more casual gaming in there, but the problem with a lot of those games is you save on your hard drives. A lot of those casual games, I'd love to have Animal Crossings. I'd love to have, you know, those kind of games in there. But the problem is you just save files on your system. So it's tough to do that, because then you'd just be playing the intro over and over again, right? So, you know, we would love to do more of those nights, and some of that's going to come with more support. So right now, I am the only person that's a non-student person that's involved with Fuel. So every other employee is a work-study student that has a full work life, maybe a second job, other hobbies, other games that they like to play. So more support and more staff will lead to more community nights. I'd love to do them every week, but it's just we're kind of capped at numbers wise right now. So it's a big part of our focus moving forward. Maybe as we expand, it can be something that we include a lot more, and I hope it is, because even like NHL nights, 2K nights, those kind of simple game nights, they're easy to do. It's just we need the numbers. So that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
No, absolutely. Well, before we wrap things up, you know, my last question is production based.
Okay.
You know, we started off mainly virtual, and we've sort of just been creeping up the ladder. But you know what? Ultimately, I'm a caster for Fuel. I watch a lot of VODs from other schools when I can find them. And it just feels like you've been part of developing such a nice, polished product. And it's not even that it's polished. It's not like we're happy with this. We're pushing it forward. We're extending. We're advancing. For you, how do you maintain that hunger of just let's keep driving this rock uphill?
Yeah, I love the get 1% better every day kind of type of mentality, where you're like, what can I improve today, and what's my main focus? What can we do? And even getting involved with Esports Canada, like it's making the scene across Canada better, but that also makes us better. If there's more programs across Canada that are supported, it's just going to only elevate us more and more. And then programs like St. Clair, for example, Conestoga this year, becoming a ginormous program, those help us push as well, because you want to try to get to that level. But production-wise, I got to send a big shout out to Apollo and everybody who's been involved. We've fully activated him in a big way, and I've challenged him quite a bit. And I challenge everybody, I think, a little bit, but certain people, you can push a little more. And our production, I'd put it up against any. There's some productions in the States where it's $1 million studios, and like the amount of money and work they put into that, I'm like, look at our streams. Come on, we're topping your streams. I'm very proud of where we've been, and again, that was on purpose focus. So even without Apollo here, and Apollo's amazing, and I owe him so much, that would still be a huge focus of ours. We got super lucky that we have an Apollo around. Now with the cycle of students, eventually Apollo's going to have to work his way into training somebody else, unless we can hire him. That's what we're hoping for. The production side is just a huge focus while we could focus on production. If we can say, once we get to the ability to do fully recruiting students. If we ever get to that part, we can already say our production good, our room good eventually. We can, start knocking some of those pillars down and really activating them to the fullest. And the fact that production is something that we can get to where it is now and still improve every day, that's huge. And it's not slowing down. We're getting better every day on that.
Yeah, well, based off that answer, I got to ask one more follow-up question now.
It's all good.
Student turnover, you know what I mean? Because we have 1-year programs here. We have 2-year programs. We also have 3-year programs. Sometimes a student's going to come back and do an extra year. It's kind of difficult because you don't know your staff rotating year in and year out. And in a casting sort of sense, for example, you build a repertoire with your co-casters. You build a dynamic. You get used to it. What's it like, knowing going into each year? I guess it's a typical post-secondary thing. You do it with sports, but you have a turnaround. You need to be able to pump in new casters, which means you need to make it known those positions are going to become available. It's an option because, for example, a lot of us, I did my first stream last year. I wasn't an actual caster, but I filled in. Min's got in on the ground floor, and it's just a lot of us. The Discord existed. I just interviewed Wishy the other day, and she's like, I saw it on the Discord. It's a great opportunity, but it's like, how do you really manage ensuring not only do you have the employees filling that turnover, but you're getting the right ones?
Now, my years of working as an event coordinator on campus really helps that. I think I can read students pretty well. And in an interview, I could usually tell within 5 minutes if that person's gonna be a part of my plan in the future. And just the way we activate certain students in a certain way, I think most students, we can see what their strengths are, and then we'll activate that strength as much as we can. And with casters, that's easy. Put a mic in front of you, keep you going. If someone shows more interest in observing and production, then we get them all involved. There's not a lot of no's around fuel. It's someone says, "Hey, I want to do this. That's what this is, right? This whole fuel report. Like, you guys want to do this? It's great. Let's go. Let's do this. Yes." So some of that comes from trial and error. Some of that comes from just like a student background that I have, where we can support the right students and get them to really excel as much as we can. But the college turnover is real. It's tough. And again, thankfully, I had 6 years of having to have an event crew roll over every year. My hype squad in my previous career, hype squad, people who help me out with events, people who set up, tear down, the people who work in the kitchens, all that rotates every other year. So it's kind of part of the growth of things on campus. Universities are a little bit luckier because they got those 4, 5, 6-year programs where you can get a little bit more comfy. But Fuel's going to be here to support those students that come in, and luckily we've built it to a way like kids are contacting me saying, I'm going to be a Fanshawe caster in 2 years when I graduate high school. Like, that's a cool message to get. And it's not just from London high schools either. Like, we'll have a kid who up in Toronto who's like, I'm going to go to Fanshawe and that's where I'm going to go casting. That's where I'm going to start my career. I'm like, that's really cool. Yeah, keep watching the streams. So stuff like that's where the goosebumps comes from, and stuff like that's where like you can hopefully advance some students. But yeah, that's I don't know if that answered your question, but
it did.
Yeah, it did. I mean, kind of going back, you were saying to the ground floor thing with me. I guess another interesting thing was even before I started the program, I saw the Discord server, and it didn't have that much of an advertisement spot for it. It was I think in this little hidden spot on
the right students are going to find that spot.
And I found it for some reason. I joined on, and it was actually you, Tyler, that messaged me first on the server and was welcoming me and talking to me a little bit, and it was really nice. And I started to notice that there's this whole open world of all these other gamers that I can meet now at Fanshawe. And since even just me seeing it as well, from now all these teams are getting together, all this stuff is coming together, I'm just curious, how does this actually make you feel seeing these teams and these players being able to collaborate?
We have a fuel house. The whole R6 team all lives together except for one player. That's amazing. People my age, one of the things I hear a lot is, where was this when I was a student? Because, you had to find your Halo friends or your whatever friends other ways. But to have it all on campus and just to sit beside a student that literally is dealing with all the same issues you are, because you're in the same year or you're a student as well, second year, and you can talk to a first year and kind of give them advice. It's just, it's really cool the way the students kind of come together. And you guys might notice at times I'll be like, over here, focus on students, don't involve me in this. Like, this should all be student led, and that's on purpose, because when a student comes into the fuel station, for example, if I'm behind the desk, it's a different interaction. It's still an interaction that I enjoy, and it's still an interaction hopefully that student will enjoy. But when it's a fellow student, it's a different interaction. When you're sitting down beside another student and you're just like, what program you in? You know, that's beautiful, that's amazing. And I got to experience that through events. I got to experience that through the Frost shows, through comedy, where people would find their friends, people would find their relationships. I know people that have gotten married that met while working on, the event crew. Extrapolate this, and that's going to happen. We already have a 4-year relationship that's come out of Fuel, so that stuff's going to happen the more this gets supported and the more it grows and the more we support the students in the right way. But that's beautiful. That's what college is for. That's what university is for. That's what that time's for. And it's awesome that we can do it through gaming and, get you away from your studies and your pressures that students have. And that's what's so great about the whole Fuel program.
You know what? I wanted to add on to that and highlight a little more, because that's exactly it. We've talked a lot about the development of esports itself here, building all video game related. But if we just take a step back for a second, it's not just an esports room that's been built. It really truly is. It's a community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a safe space. And, I was talking with Wishy about this the other day. It's a space, and it's not just a safe space, LGBTQ, woman, everybody. It's just a uniquely safe space where you can meet friends, you can meet people in other communities. There's great overlap. And in lieu with that, it's like, I would say for myself, we're here on the Fuel Report, the student union, the school. They give us all the opportunity to sort of push the envelope if we want to. And I'm just glad to say they gave you the same opportunity as well, because now we're all here as well. But just seeing not only the growth and boom of esports, but the actual community as well. Because, it's one thing to Nightflash, for example. I don't play any games Nightflash plays, but we do work together. You have that community feeling. I'd go grab a beer with Nightflash, have before, and just making those connections. And that's the thing. We might only be here for a year or two, but what you're building can supersede that year or two. You know what I mean? You're helping forge connections that can go long beyond the Fuel room, but we'll always have that base memory of where these things started. So I guess it's important to note to you that you're a part of all of that.
No, that's amazing to hear. That's exactly what it's here for. So in a lot of meetings that I'm in with like college people or other people, I very rarely mention gaming. It's all about the community building. It's all about the people, how you're going to activate students. Students come in and they're the shy, especially ones that maybe weren't supported or they didn't live in a big city. They come from a spot where they were kind of coddled, or they were kind of like only in the room, their only friends were online. When they come into that room and they just become captains of teams, they find their social lives through the Fuel program. That's literally the point. And for all the soft skills that you can say that classic sports teach you, you can learn them all in esports as well. Again, very rarely am I talking about the gaming. I'm talking about the community that's built around it, the friendships, the way people grow into humans and successful students, as well as successful adults, is just amazing. That's the whole point. It's great.
It really is.
Okay, well, on that note, after a quick shout out to Fuel and all your work, Tyler, I'm CJ
Wait,
Goder.
1 sec. Mins is almost finished with us, so we got to give Mins some shine. Thank you for everything that you've done, buddy, for the program. You're about to be here, graduating, get out of here. And again, one of the success stories. So thanks, Mins, for everything, and you guys for doing this. So you can get back to your outro. Just
no worries,
interrupted
no worries.
there.
Thank you, Tyler.
The prod team always likes to hide behind their little production booth. But yes, thanks to Mins, and as Apollo knows, since he hates when we bring him up, thanks to Apollo's as well for all the great work he's done on the Fuel Report, as he's the one that'll be stringing this together later for us. But on that note, we'll be back with another segment of the... We're just going to cut that. We'll be back for another segment of the Fuel Report after this. I'm CJ Goder. Thanks to Mins and our esports director, Tyler Hetherington, for joining us, and we'll be back with you in one moment. Welcome back to the Fuel Report Live. Well, I just saw we didn't make that cut live time, so you love to see I'm human too, make mess ups live time, but that's all right. Let's move towards our top 10 now. A different week here, a different pace. We talked about it in the introduction. Way less games in action, so we got less clips submitted, so we're not actually going to have a top 10 this week, but a top 5 instead. You guys looking forward to our, just because we have less clips doesn't mean we have worse clips.
Yeah, that's true. And honestly, I consider this the calm before the storm because playoffs will be coming from the clips that we will see next week, So next week's clips are going to be very, very interesting. All of them are going to mean so much more. But of course, this is the prelude. This is an insight on what is to come. If players are playing good now and they have big clips now, it's confidence moving forward, right? So I'm excited to see what we have this week.
Well, you mentioned playoffs. Let's kick off our top fives with an honorable mention because it's the CSGO team. They're currently in the playoffs, and this is from their opening round. Now, I mentioned earlier in the hot streaks, Chief is playing nasty in this playoff game. He's going to start things off with an absolutely nasty little no-scope. Into our top five, Boy says, let's get Val on the board with our official top five. It's going to be a 2-on-1 situation. Boy's going to be blinded here. He's going to find the first, and he's going to execute on the second, and he's going to clutch up to get Val placed in our top five. Boy's happy to see that one happening. Stress level always high in a 2v1 situation. Rolling into our fourth clip. It's Valorant once more, and Swears is going to collect another spot in our top five with not one kill, not two kills, not even 3 kills. But by the time we get to the end of this clip, he's going to wrap up the 4-piece to secure the round victory for the Fuel. Moving into our third spot. We're not done with Valorant. We have a little bit more for you. Breaking into the top 10, Elko going to bait for Akimbo, and Akimbo's going to execute from the backside, showing off the teamwork of our Val squad. Moving into our top 2. You thought we were done with CSGO? Well, you'd be wrong if you did. It's Cheap. Back again in our top 5 official in our second spot. And you know what? Cheap had an outstanding opening playoff game. This is off the first round. And it's just a tiny 3K. Look at the flick. Look at the speed. But you know what? That flick was nice and all, but CSGO isn't done, and neither is Cheap. Cheap's second place clip was nasty, but he knew he could do better. The top spot's going to another 3K by Cheap, and you're about to see one of the nastiest flicks I've ever seen. The game could not keep up, and you know what? Got a note? That was a headshot as well. Like that last clip by Cheap, that is silly. That is gosh darn outrageous. The game couldn't keep up. I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah, no, that last clip, that last flick especially is just insanity, man. To have that reaction time and sort of the precision with your mouse and because, that is a pretty precise movement. He's not seeing the full player. He's just seeing the upper half of his body too. So, what a play by Cheap. But, overall, just a great top 5. It's really close.
Yeah, some of them are we struggled to place them on that top 5. I was a big fan of Boyce's 2-piece, even though it was only a 2-piece. Him being blind to be able to pull it off, that's huge. And it's always great to see CSGO on the top 5 because we haven't seen a whole ton of them this season on this rank, but here they are, and these guys are playing really well.
Number 1 spot and in a playoff game. That's outrageous. You love to see it. Good work from Cheap and the rest of that CSGO squad this week. They're advancing to the round of 4. Make sure you guys catch them in action this coming week. And, we've talked about playoffs a whole lot. So, Kieran, how about you bring us into playoff picks?
Yeah, playoff picks. Essentially, we're just going to give you an update on what's going on with our teams here. And I think we're going to start with who are guaranteed to make playoffs and what's going on with them. So, CJ, take it away.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick run through of just who we know. You can keep an eye on the stream schedule up and coming and try and find out when these games are in action. We got the CSGO field team. We were just mentioning it. We'll get some specifics for you now. They're competing in the NACE playoffs, and they're advancing to the round of 4. I believe that'll be played this coming Friday, and they had just an absolute stomping victory, 2-0 sweep in the round of 8 to open up their playoff journey, and that's why they're in our hot streaks for a reason. This Wednesday will be Rocket League's first playoff game, and that'll be in ECAC action. That is our one team. Not sure if that'll be on stream, but if it is, make sure you check that out. Overwatch, they've been on a bit of a break themselves. They're also heading into the ECAC playoffs next week, and if they win their game, they'll actually have 2 back-to-back games that day. So if they find success in the first one, it's going to be an absolutely busy evening for them. Now, you know, I wasn't going to mention them, but I guess I should. The Rainbow Six One team is prepped, primed, and ready to take off on their playoff journey. And you know what? If you ask me, there's no better test than their game this week against the second place squad versus the one squad to get yourself tuned up and ready for a playoff journey. Fuel Valorant, the one team, my goodness, is locked in for NECC playoffs, and they're just currently playing for seeding to try and get the most favorable matchup they could. And Captain Coach Boyce kind of gave me an update earlier today, and he said Val Rising is also locked into the playoffs. Kieran, you know, we've got who's locked in. Who's fighting for the playoff lives?
You know, we just ended talking about Valorant, but let's just pick it back up real quick. Val Academy needs to win this next game if they want to be guaranteed in the playoffs. Otherwise, it goes to a bit of a weird tiebreaker thing. Not really sure how that shakes out. But Rocket League, NECC action, fighting at the spot, need to win their next two. Currently at a 1-5 record, so that's they didn't play any games, so still need to win their next two. R6 ACAD playing for their playoff spot on Tuesday against the Hood Blazers. I would say watch it, but I don't think they're getting a stream. But be sure, if you're in the R6 1 stream, be sure to throw your support for the R6 2 as well, because they're a team, they deserve love. And then closing us out, Rocket League once again. Rocket League Academy for NECC, currently with a 3-3 record. Their NECC scoreboard hasn't been updated, so we're either 5th or 6th, and top 8 make playoffs. So we're looking good there, but it's not a guarantee. But yeah, that's who is currently still fighting for their lives. Now, for the somewhat gloomier subject, I'm going to send it over to Reider on who's been knocked out.
Yeah, I get the bad news segment tonight. Who's been knocked out for sure, no longer be in playoffs, at least for these specific leagues. Fuel Rocket League is knocked out of NACE. They will no longer have to play NACE games this semester. They had a record of 3-4, so they were just on the edge, but they couldn't get it done in NACE. Luckily, these guys are still moving on in a couple different leagues. Rocket League Academy will miss out on ECAC action. They're done out for the season. Valorant, NACE, they're completely out. CVAL, they're completely out. But as mentioned, NECC, these guys are locked in for playoffs. CSGO, as we were mentioning, face it. Unfortunately for them, they were not able to make the playoffs. But at least this list is fairly short this week. But I think that's it from us this week. Let's have a quick look at our schedule so you guys can be familiar with all that we will have on stream this week, everything happening in Fanshawe Fuel action. And of course, on Monday, first up, we will be having on stream CCL, Call of Duty action, last chance qualifiers. The first one will be at 7:30, and we will keep the stream rolling for the 9 p.m. game as well. It's double elimination, so these guys are guaranteed 2 games. Make sure you don't miss that, as well as Valorant will be happening at the same time. NECC action, as they'll be playing Northeastern, Conestoga, and then Trent. So a lot of close-to-home teams for those guys, as Rising will be playing at 7 along with Academy. And the main team against Trent at 8. And then League of Legends will also be happening at 6 p.m. as well, NECC action. Tuesday, that's the big RMU game. The Fanshawe Fuel Rainbow Six team still competing in their last regular season NECC game. And the Academy team are going to be playing the Hood Blazers at the same time, NECC. Super Smash Bros. At 8 p.m. as well against Cleveland State. Wednesday, we have League of Legends Academy action again versus DPU, as well as ECAC Rocket League action. The main team playing 2 games back-to-back at 8 and 9. Thursday, 7 p.m., NECC, more Rocket League action. This one against U Ottawa. It's a big rival. It's going to be an interesting game to watch. We don't usually have games played on Thursday, so a little change of pace, but love to see these guys on stream. And, of course, the CSGO team is so hot. Randolph-Macomb College at 7 p.m., and that will be our week of Fanshawe Fuel Esports. Firstly, big thanks to these guys having me on. I love showing up and hosting this with you guys. It's always a great time. Big thanks to Apollo, of course, a wonderful producer for us who sits behind the scenes and make sure everything looks all nice and pretty for us. And then, of course, next week, next Saturday, same time, we're going to have Nylander on for an interview. And he is a CSGO player, but he's also an avid Fanshawe Fuel fan. He cheers for every team. This guy's a super fan, and we will be talking to him next week. So make sure you don't miss out. But on behalf of all of us, thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate your guys' support in chat as well. And hopefully we see you next week, 6 p.m., same time.